Exciting stuff, guys. In this video I'm going to be reviewing the CAMMUS C5 wheel, the CAMMUS CP5 pedal set and the desk clamp for the CAMMUS C5. I'm going to be unboxing them, giving you my initial thoughts, reviewing the software, trying them on a PC, and I will also be trying them on PlayStation 5 with the Raslution 2 adapter. So let's check out exactly what we get in the box. This was sent to me for free by CAMMUS for the purpose of this review. The only requirement for this review is that I have the name CAMMUS and C5 in the video title. Aside from that, I can say exactly what I want to say about this. Opening the box, we've got the instruction sheet and a decal sheet. The decal sheet is there to label your rotary encoders. Below the first layer of the foam packaging, you're going to find the CAMMUS C5 wheel. This feels surprisingly heavy because the motor is in the wheelbase. Next to this, there is the cardboard box which contains all of the cables you need. Power supply cable, aluminium mounts for the wheelbase, a mini Phillips screwdriver, the wheelbase power brick, and finally the USB connection cables and the cooling fan. So with the unboxing done, I have actually assembled the wheel stand to the back of the C5 wheel rim. And yeah, first of all impressions, it's pretty solid. It feels very well made. It's surprisingly heavy, with it looking like it's only a wheel rim. It feels heavy, but this has got a bit of a secret really. The very large bulky centerpiece of this wheel, which isn't particularly aesthetically pleasing in my opinion, is actually the direct drive motor. It's almost an inside out wheelbase. It's incredibly clever, in fact. I've never seen anything like it. The best way to describe it is take the Moser R5 wheelbase as an example. A typical direct drive wheel will have the motor which is clamped to your desk or wheel stand or whatever. It has an output shaft which is the thing that rotates, and then your wheel rim connects to this. Now the way CAMMUS have done things, they've done things completely backwards. Essentially, the motor shaft is the thing that clamps to your desk, and the motor, the wheelbase, is the thing that the steering wheel is attached to, and that's the thing you steer. So it's literally thinking outside the box, and it's incredibly clever. Now the truth here is actually I've used this wheel for a couple of months already on and off, so this isn't a brand new unboxing experience, but I have not yet used the pedals or used this as a complete combination. So now I have the pedals, I'm finally getting around to doing the full review of the CAMMUS C5. The size of the wheel rim is approximately the same size as a G29. I think it's a 290mm D-shaped wheel. It's got a flat bottom to it. It's a leather feeling wheel rim. Now I don't know if this is a faux leather, most likely is. Inside stitching which feels really quite nice, I've got to say. Machined aluminium, and looks like a carbon effect, plated carbon effect. It looks very realistic. So the front piece is carbon effect, but being exactly circular, it's maybe not that cosmetically pleasing. There are plenty of buttons on the front of this, and there are quite a short throw button. There is no D-pad as such, but there are 4 directional arrows, which is probably just as good as D-pad, to be honest. And the most interesting thing for me, this is a budget wheel, guys. We've got rotary dials, which you'll be able to map in PC games. There are LED shifter lights, and there is a speed display in the middle of the wheel. Not that I find them particularly useful. I always use in-game displays. A thing that all of the reviews point out, and for me it looked like a deal breaker, is the incredibly small paddle shifters on the back. But actually I've used this for a couple of months on and off, and they work surprisingly well. Tactile, they feel okay. It's not quite as satisfying as pulling a big clunky paddle, but actually functionally you can drive super fast with them. It's not a problem at all. On the back of the wheel slash wheelbase is the power button, the reset button, the DC input, USBs, fan power supply, and there is a fan in the desk mount which actually blows onto the back of the wheelbase for some forced cooling. And the way the wheel is and the way it mounts off the back, I think the desk clamp is probably quite essential, because it puts it in that position slightly elevated off of your normal rig wheel deck or your table, whereas if it wasn't on the clamp, if it was just attached with the spars that come out, you may find it difficult to get a good seating position with the wheel being a little bit too low. The desk clamp does a great job. It's fully functional, it holds it really securely on here. However, if you are mounting it to a table or a desk which you really care about, then I'm not sure these foam pads do enough to take up for the roughness of where the screws screw through on it assembly. So I wouldn't go clamping it to your favourite desk furniture. I did also make an error where I forgot to put the little cups on which clamp onto the bottom side. It wasn't particularly clear in the manual, but I guess that's maybe on me as well, because they were in the box, they were just sitting there looking at me. I just didn't fit them. Now to unbox the pedals, we're going to get the box open. Inside on the top is going to be the instruction manual. Underneath that we're going to just start to expose the pedal plates, but in this foam packaging here is the pedal plates. We need to make sure we extract them from the packaging, and then you'll have access to the base plate, which we can remove like so. Then you're going to have some small bag containing some screws, and then another small bag containing the USB cable. You will also have some adhesive rubber feet which you can attach the bottom of the pedals if you're using it on a hard floor, and then you've got the throttle pedal and the brake pedal. The assembly of the brake pedal set isn't particularly challenging, it's maybe just a little bit fiddly. A lot of the assembly of all of the components is with M3x6mm screws. Now, for me personally, I think M3 is a little bit small for some hardware that you're using with your feet. I would make M4 or M5, I think, probably be more suitable. But with a little bit of patience, it was no problem to assemble these. Fitting the pedal plates, you do have the option to change the height of these pedal plates. I had them set to the maximum because I think they're a pretty small pedal as it is, so I wanted as much throw on the pedal as possible. Now, these are something that I've not yet used. These are brand new to me, and I've got to say it feels like a very simple but sturdy construction. It's almost all metal, maybe that's a plastic shroud there, but metal pedals, metal frame, and it looks like it's going to work pretty good. I think the throttle pedal is probably a little bit lighter than the brake pedal, but overall both pedals feel reasonably stiff, so if you are floor standing these, then you might have problems with pushing them away, so they would need to be butted up against something to make sure they didn't slide away. I'll be attaching these to my GT Omega classic wheel stand bolted in, so I think I'll be pretty sorted for that. If you do want anything from GT Omega, guys, then check out the link in the description below. My exclusive discount CD5 gets you 5% off anything at GT Omega. Go and check them out. This pedal set is a Hall effect based pedal set, so it is regular throttle and a regular distance based brake. It's not a load cell pedal, but I wouldn't expect a load cell pedal at this price point. It is also fixed as a 2-pedal setup, so unlike the Moser R5 bundle where you can buy an additional clutch pedal and reconfigure it, this is a 2-pedal only setup. But for many of the racing games that you'll play playing in GT cars with just throttle and brake only, no need for the clutch. So the first impressions when I've got my hands on the hardware is that the hardware actually feels really good quality. It feels way higher quality than the price you're paying for it. As the instruction manuals that come with it aren't fantastic, and there is some assembly required, so it's not like where you can get a Logitech G29 out of the box, plug it in and you're good to go. There is some assembly required, but you're getting a direct drive wheel and pedal set for a very low cost. So let me get this set up on the rig and we're going to dive into it in a bit more detail. While I'm installing this CAMMUS C5 onto my GT Omega classic wheel stand, I'm going to try and tidy my wires up a little bit as well. Just offering up the pedal to see where I want to position them. There's plenty of slots and holes available in the GT Omega classic wheel stand. I'm going to bolt through in 4 positions and I think we'll be good to go. The hardware that I'm going to be installing the pedals with was included with the GT Omega classic wheel stand. I use my GT Omega Classic wheel stand with the RS6 seat and the rear seat frame, and it pretty much transforms the GT Omega Classic wheel stand into a full sim rig for a very, very low cost. I've got plenty of adjustability for the wheel deck, so I can change the wheel angle to be exactly what I want it to be. So with the CAMMUS C5 pedal set and wheel and desk clamp all set up in my GT Omega Classic wheel stand, everything seemed to go together really quite nicely. It feels pretty solid. The desk clamp has some angle adjustability built into the desk clamp, but I also did compensate for some angle with the GT Omega Classic wheel stand. So that's the hardware setup. Let's now go and check out the software. So on the PC now, I've got the CAMMUS C5 software running. You can download this software from the CAMMUS website, and as you can see, I've got it plugged in via USB. It's detecting the CP5 pedals, the C5 wheelbase, and the C5 steering wheel. The wheelbase and steering wheel is integrated together. There's no way to interchange them. So this is where you can just refresh your devices if you're not seeing something already plugged in. Going down to where it says parameter, this is where we can change the settings of the force feedback of the wheelbase. So we can change our steering range. I've got mine set to 900 degrees because that seems to be the most universally compatible setting, but depending what game you're using, you can change this. This is where you can also change the power, so if you feel like it's a bit too strong in a game you're playing, you can reduce the power. I think it's a 5 Newton meter torque on this CAMMUS C5. You also have natural damping and natural frequency, natural inertia and idle spring. In the game effects tab, you also have some more parameters which you can adjust. And then heading over to the assistance tab, this is where you can find some things to help to fix potential problems and compatibility with your CAMMUS C5 wheelbase and any PC simulation that you may be trying. So if you have a legacy game, for example, you can invert the force feedback if that is needed. I've not come across a game that needs to do this, but it is available to use if you need to. You can have hands-off protection. This is where you release the wheel and the wheel's going crazy. After a certain amount of time, it will just stop and you grab it and it regain the wheel. I always use it on disabled, whether it's on the Moser R5 or the CAMMUS C5. I'm going to be holding the wheel no matter what, and I don't want to have the force feedback to be cut if ever it gets confused. You can change the end stop strength, so when you go beyond the 900 degrees, you can have it as a softer end stop or a hard end stop. I like to have it soft. There is some overheat protection settings here, and it actually gives you the current reading, the current temperature of the inside wheelbase. Mine's currently at 29 degrees C. The temperature threshold we can set is it to be 80 degrees centigrade for the temperature protection. And there are a few explanations for error codes. I assume the error codes will appear on the dash if ever the errors occur. I've yet to see them. Going down one to devices, this is where we can check all the function of the connected peripherals, so the pedal sets going through the wheelbase and the steering, but for now the pedals are set perfectly fine. Now interestingly, I have watched Tidgny's video of this CAMMUS C5 and he had problems with it not getting to full throttle at the end points. Now what I've personally done, I think this is the best way to do it, and I've recalibrated the pedals. When your feet are completely off the pedals, you set the minimum, and that's set successfully. And what I'd like to do is I go to full brake and I just release it a little bit, and then I reset that max brake with it not being fully pushed down. This helps to make sure you always get full brake. And I think some of the problem with the pedals come from just the mechanical and physical angle of the pedals. I'll get to that a little bit later in this video. And I just follow the exact same process for the throttle, just to make sure that I short calibrate the pedal so that when I'm usually in operation, I'm overthrowing to make sure I always get perfectly to 100%. And then we can click on here to choose the steering wheel. And this is where we can just confirm all of the wheel settings. So we've got the wheel rotations, the maximum rotation angle. You can see the wheel position here right now. So does it track here? If for whatever reason your wheel is calibrated off center, you can move it to the center and then choose to reset the center position. This was actually something that I found was a little bit off when I very first plugged in the wheel. I needed to come into the software here to set myself the new neutral point, and that's going to be a bit of a significant thing if you're using it on PlayStation. I still had to configure the wheel on my PC before I plugged it into the PlayStation to get it working. If I didn't have a PC to plug this into, I don't think I would have been able to sort out the center, which could be a deal breaker for you. You can also press all of the buttons on the controller to make sure they're all mapped and good to go. So all of the dials, switches, all show up as different buttons. On the dashboard tab at the top here, this is where we can configure some of the display. So we've got the brightness of the display. We can choose whether it shows the gear that you're in, whether it's the speed in miles an hour or the speed in kilometers an hour. Change the color of the lights, and then down here the rotary encoders, the knobs. You can choose whether they happen to be left, 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 right, right kind of rotary switches, or whether you have it to a 12 position clocking setting, and that will depend on what you want to use it for your game, if your game is compatible with a 12-way rotary encoder. But it's great that they've got the option to choose it here, and 3 rotary encoders is really quite cool for a product at this price point. And then finally at the bottom here, I'm going to turn this off. This is the beep on startup of the wheel. It's very harsh. It's very, very harsh and loud beep. So I'm going to turn it off because I don't want to hear that every time I start the wheel. And then at the bottom here we've got update. This is where you will do a firmware update if you need to do so. Perhaps when you first plug in your product, you may need to do a firmware update. We just click on open firmware assistant and run through that process. It's super easy. There's nothing more to say, guys. It's super easy to update the firmware. So that is going to cover the software for the CAMMUS C5, and it seems fully functional. There's a lot of settings you can tune. It's maybe not quite as fully fleshed out as some of the other brand softwares, but it's certainly good to have the ability to change some details with the way the force feedback works on the CAMMUS C5. Into ACC now, and I'm going to just configure the CAMMUS C5. I'm going to head to options, head to controllers, and there is an auto config that seems to have appeared since I've installed the CAMMUS C5 software, but let's load this. It's going to load that preset. I guess the axes are going to be set up. That's looking good. Brake, throttle, all good there. There is no clutch pedal. Shift up, shift down is already configured. I'm not sure if these settings have changed or recommended, but I'm going to try these settings straight as it is. But then I can bind additional buttons. Now there are 8, 4, 12, 20. There's a huge amount of buttons on the faceplate, and there's 3 rotary encoders. So I'm going to choose a few of these, get these assigned right now. So a couple of useful ones here fit perfectly work well with the rotary encoders on PC specifically. So I'm going to use increased traction control. I'm going to have that to rotary encoder to the right, decreased traction control, rotary encoder to the left. Cut, we'll have that on the middle one, and let's just quickly assign a bunch of these ones. And then the ABS, let's have that on the left hand one. So easy to assign all of the controls. Brake bias probably should have been one on there, but you can choose what you want. There's more dials than you probably need. I'm going to go for a drive around Spa, just a practice session in the GT Omega McLaren 720 Evo. Shift up in the first gear, rolling out pit lane. Do I have the pit limiter on or off? It's automatically disengaged. Steering feels heavy. Let's see how it, you know, there's a lot of detail through the feedback in ACC. I've got to say, pretty good so far. This is just the default settings. Yeah, I've got to say there's a lot of meatiness in the way the wheel feels. You can really feel the car load up, which is very, very impressive. Brakes is probably the hardest thing to get used to with any switch of hardware, just because the brake feel is so critical. And actually, the weight of the wheel feels really heavy. I've got to say, I may even want to reduce the force feedback, maximum torque maybe. Yeah, in these corners here, you feel really start to load up. For only 5 Newton meters of torque, I've got to say it's an impressive amount. And you can feel the feedback. It feels quite snappy, quite responsive. Put the car in here. Pedals wise, I think I'm getting full throttle. Let's just look at the readouts. Looks like in the bottom corner we are getting clipping in force feedback, so it is hitting the red quite a lot. I am going to actually reduce that force feedback. So I'm going to set the force feedback gain down to 60% in game. Leave everything else as it is. The steering lock is set to 900 to match my software settings for 900 on the wheel rotation. Feels a little bit more snappy now, a bit lighter. Let's just see how that works for the force feedback. And we are, yeah, we're underneath. We're not clipping anymore, guys. So it is lighter, but I can feel just a few clips here and there at the maximums, which I think is perfectly fine to have it peaking into that red. But it felt a bit heavy for me last time anyway. I like to have a lighter wheel when I'm driving anyway, so maybe the 5 Newton meters of torque is more than I actually want. I can feel the vibration of that curve just then. Paddle shifters now, using them in anger. They are small, but if you are new to sim racing and new to just sim racing hardware, you'd get used to them straight away. It doesn't have that tactile feel of like smashing through a good set of downshifts from like a proper race car, but functionally they work perfectly. They almost feel like it's a button behind the wheel rather than like a full paddle pull. But yeah, honestly, you'd get used to it, guys. Through Eau Rouge now, I'm going to back off. The car weights up really nicely in the bottom there. I think we're a long way off of clipping, so I probably could have got to 65 or 70% in-game force feedback settings. Now what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to just dial back on the TC, set that down to 2, TC cut, using the rotary. That's working quite well actually. Set the cut to 0 and the TC only to 2. That should get the rear, oh yeah, there we go. That'll get the rear sliding around a lot more. We can feel the way the force feedback portrays that back to me, and I can feel the alignment force as the rear starts to slide. It encourages me to opposite lock and catch that slide. So let's see how this feels through a few different corners here. A bit wide there. Through this chicane will be really interesting to see if we can feel the back start to move around through the wheel. Actually really quite nice. It really does encourage you just to straighten up that wheel as the rear starts to rotate. Yes, it really does. It's quite nice. I'm not even tuned any of the settings for the wheelbase yet. So far so good with the way the force feedback feels. I am showing gear selection. Oops. Yes, as I was saying before, I smashed it into the wall while not really looking where I'm going. I've got it set for gear selection, so into neutral. Shift is pretty good, and then we can just go through the gears here. Now that's quite good. I like that. Now let's try the CAMMUS C5 on the PS5 using the Brook Raslution 2 adapter. Now I've used this adapter almost for 9 to 10 months using the Moser R5 wheelbase. It's been really good for me. But how does it work with the CAMMUS? So first of all, we're going to power it on, power on the back of the wheel, just a short press, and it'll go through its power up cycle. It'll rotate itself. For some reason it doesn't rotate itself to straight up, I don't know why. But then I'm going to get the USB cable out the back of the CAMMUS C5 and plug it into port 1 of the Brook Raslution 2 adapter. And then now I'm going to plug in the USB end of the Brook Raslution 2 adapter into the front of my PS5. The Raslution 2 adapter will go through a startup sequence and then it'll be ready to go. And then there is a button on this wheel that we map to the PlayStation button of the controller. I think it's one of the 4 middle ones, but that's going to bring up the assign controller, and then we simply use what would have been the X button to select it. Now the buttons on the CAMMUS C5 aren't labelled in the PlayStation, but the shape of it, you'll be able to recognise what to what. Head over to controllers and then head down to steering and controller settings. This is where we'll see it's functioning if we can get it properly done. Now this is looking good. It's got the full 900 degrees of rotation. Throttle and brake work well. No handbrake, no clutch, no H pattern shifter with this. It's just a basic CAMMUS C5. We could recalibrate the pedals if we wanted to, but there's no need to. The calibration we did in the CAMMUS C5 software has translated perfectly fine. So the calibration on the hardware translates perfectly well through the Raslution 2 adapter. Now I'm going to quickly show you what my settings are for force feedback before we begin. We're going on to controller settings. I actually have it at 1010. That's what I've been using with the Moser R5. I feel it gives me a great feeling of the strength using force feedback is 10, and the force feedback sensitivity, to me, that gives me the most detail through the wheel. It makes the wheel feel tight enough to allow me to know exactly when the tyres are slipping. I've not yet driven the CAMMUS C5 using these settings yet, so let's go and find out how this is. So I'm in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 car, and this is known to be a real wild ride, and let's see how this works. Again, feels okay. D-pad, I can control the MFD with a D-pad, that works perfectly well. Brakes feel okay. A little bit deep on the brakes there. The wheel feedback feels good to me. I'm feeling similar feelings as I got from the Moser R5. Let's see how it feels through Eau Rouge. Oh, lift off oversteer, massively lift off oversteer from the car, but the feedback was giving me that alignment force. We all know from playing the circuit experience in the Lamborghini, lift off oversteer is incredible, and this is where it's a really good car to trial the way this feels. A little bit of self-centering going on down the straight. You can feel that sliding, you can catch that, that's pretty good I think. You feel the car moving, you can feel the alignment forces through the wheels, so I actually do quite like the way it feels. Brake pedal wise, functionally, it is perfect. I'm getting full brake, I'm getting full throttle, I'm not suffering the same problems that Tidgney had in his review video, but I think that's probably helped by short calibrating the pedals, because the way the pedals are, they are quite flat, especially when you're pushing fully down on the pedals. It really is quite flat. I will cover the way the PlayStation works, feels and drives in a more detailed future video, guys, so make sure you subscribe for that one. But the headlines is, using the Raslution 2 adapter and the CAMMUS C5, it works great. I don't think there's a problem with it. I'm happy to drive the car. The feedback feels good, it feels reasonably strong. It's certainly comparable to the Moser R5 with regard to the strength and the responsiveness through the force feedback, and that's before I've even got to dial in the actual settings on the CAMMUS C5. So there we go, my initial impressions of the CAMMUS C5 is actually really quite positive. For the price point, a direct drive wheel that gives you that much crisp force feedback responsiveness is actually incredibly impressive. The wheel itself is the most impressive part of this bundle. The pedals certainly are the weakest part of this bundle, however they are a lot better than a lot of people have made them out to be. They are a full metal construction, they have a good amount of travel, the brake pedal is marginally stiffer than the throttle pedal, which is okay, and on the rig they work perfectly fine. If you were to be using these pedals floor standing, then I think they're a little bit stiff on the spring. I think you might have a hard time stopping them from moving away from you, so you need to butt them up against a wall or something like that. So yeah, for this whole bundle, I think, guys, it's for the kind of enthusiast that is okay with a little bit of sub-assembly and a little bit of creativity to get it to work exactly how you want it to be. It isn't an unbox it, plug it in and use it straight away solution. You do have to assemble the pedals, you do have to assemble the wheel stand. The instructions aren't great, but if you're willing to put the time in to get this done, then you're getting a lot of product for very little money. If you are PC racing on a budget and want some direct drive positivity, then I would highly recommend this combo. If you are only on PlayStation without access to a PC and will be requiring the use of the Raslution 2 adapter, then it's a difficult thing to recommend, because you will need to use the PC at some point to configure some elements of this wheel before you even use the Raslution 2 adapter to use with your PS5 or PS4. On top of this, you have the cost of the Raslution 2 adapter, which is £100, $100 wherever you are in the world. That's a significant chunk of the cost of the wheel itself. With it being such a low cost wheel and a reasonably expensive adapter, it then starts to make it a bit of a more expensive deal, and that's perhaps when you should start looking elsewhere for your direct drive wheel for PlayStation. If you use both PlayStation and PC, then this could still be an option for you, because PC is directly natively supported. The Raslution 2 adapter will allow you to have a low cost wheel for your PC, and then just for $100 extra you have then a wheel that becomes compatible with your PlayStation. That's a better cost to swallow. And then the other negative of this wheel, I think it's almost something where you would buy it and use it. If you were thinking further down the line of something where you want to switch out the wheel rim or switch to a formula style wheel or upgrade your pedals, then I think this is a more difficult thing to go ahead with, because this suits the kind of consumer that would like to buy it and use it and just forget about it, just keep using it over and over again. If you're looking to expand your sim racing hardware and peripherals with wheels and other things, this isn't compatible with any other wheels. It is the wheel shape it's a D, so if you're looking to drift, that might be a little bit annoying, although it's not too bad with the D shape. And if you had in mind to go for a load cell pedal in the future, then there's no real load cell pedal upgrade path for this CAMMUS C5 set, so I don't know how you'd go about that. So the best way to wrap this up into a very simple should I buy it or not question is that if you want a low cost direct drive wheel, then it's hard to argue against this. The way the force feedback feels is superb. There are some minor annoyances with the way the pedals are, the geometry of the pedals, the short paddle shifters. If you can look past that and look for the value in the low cost direct drive setup, then this could be a great option for you. I have got a discount code for CAMMUS. It's in the description below. Feel free to go and check that out. It should give you a bit of discount if you're looking to buy directly from CAMMUS. I will be covering the use of CAMMUS specifically on the PlayStation in a lot more detail, guys, so make sure you subscribe for that one. It will be linked on screen when that video is ready. Go and check it out, and we'll catch you in the next one.